6 bells striking.
Good evening to those watching. Welcome to tonight's Thursday City Council meeting for the City of Xenia. Today is Thursday, June 25th, 2020. We'll call the meeting to order. And at this time, we are going to offer an invocation. I'll be doing that, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Thomas Scrivens. If you'd all please rise. Dear gracious Lord, Heavenly Father, thank you for today, for every day. Life is precious. We definitely understand that in the times that we're living in. We pray that you will give healing upon our community, upon our land, upon our country. Help us to be unified and stand together in one brotherhood. Bless this meeting tonight and those that are attending and those that are watching. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll see.
Thank you very much, Councilman Scrivens, for the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, I'll ask for a roll call.
Vice President Walls.
Here by Zoom.
Councilman Scrivens.
Present.
Councilwoman Dean.
Here.
Councilman Brandt.
Here.
Councilman Dean.
Here.
Mayor Mays.
Here.
President Smith.
Here. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes from our June 11th, 2020 special and regular meeting. I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes as written.
So moved.
Moved by the mayor and seconded by Councilman Scrivens. Any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the minutes before us? Seeing none, roll call to accept, please.
Vice President Walls.
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens.
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean.
Aye.
Councilman Branham.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is special presentations. Our agenda says we have none. However, we have invited Melissa Howell from Greene County Combined Health District. She is here tonight to do a presentation, and I think there's some slides along with that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll give you a second to get settled. And then following her presentation, I do have one public comment to read. For those that are watching tonight, our meeting is closed to the public due to the COVID-19 situation. And you'll be speaking upon that tonight as well. So we'll give you just a moment. Yes.
Good evening, Council, and thank you for having me. For the last 5 months, as you know, the Health Department has been actively involved in COVID-19 response. So at the beginning of January, that's when we first found out about the case, the outbreak. Okay. Yes, I'm soft-spoken. I apologize. So we learned about the case in China and the outbreak going on in China. And one of our first things that we do is we provide notification to our partners. That includes the hospitals, the Emergency Management Agency, first responders. And so we just wanted to make sure that everyone in Greene County was ready at the time. We very quickly went from just an incident command to area command, and that involved all jurisdictions, kind of all agencies. And what our department did is we separated out by sectors. So every sector had a public health employee assigned to them to take their phone calls, their messages, their questions, their concerns, all the way up to the general public. So since the time in January up till now, I'm just going to give you an update on what's been going on. As of June the 21st, 2020, there are 190 cases of COVID-19 throughout Greene County. 139 of those have been confirmed. 51 are probable. Sometimes we get questions on, well, what does that number mean? The 139 confirmed means that they have had the actual COVID-19 antiviral test, and then the probables are most likely going to be the ones that had the antibody test, meaning that they're going to show some type of immune response in the past that they've had it. We've had a total of 31 hospitalized and 8 individuals have died. I want to take us back a little bit to just understand how this virus works, how public health works, and really when it is that the public sees the data, the numbers coming out. Just so we're all very clear that public health is kind of the last step in the process here. And there's a lot that can be done to mitigate this disease prior to us seeing the data. So let's assume that 14 days ago, an individual in this room became infected with coronavirus, and you see that infection over on the left-hand side of the screen. Then they go through the incubation period, which is anywhere from 2 to 14 days. You'll hear people say that 2 to 14 days many times. And then they typically will become symptomatic, we would say. And during the symptomatic period, what that means is that they are going to show the signs and symptoms of this disease. And I bet if I asked you what they were right now, you could tell me. The fever, the cough, the shortness of breath. Those are the classic symptoms of this disease. Now down below that, you're going to see the red arrow that talks about the infectious period of this disease. The infectious period starts during the incubation period and may or may not include symptoms. In fact, some individuals don't show symptoms at all during the entire course of this disease. And so you'll see down in the orange arrow, there could be a period of pre-symptomatic, there's symptomatic, and then you can be asymptomatic. But at that point in time, you'll see the curves start to go up above signs and symptoms. In the normal course of the disease, people will have signs and symptoms, and so they're at the end of that incubation period. Now they're starting the sickness period, and they're going to be like, oh, I feel sick. But many, many times, people don't necessarily go to the doctor and get that script to have the test done on that day. They may be like, well, I'll wait a couple days. And if I still feel bad, or I'll wait a day, then I'll go ahead and get the test done. So it could be a couple days after that, and they'll be like, oh, I'm going to go get tested. And then once they get tested, lots of times what we're seeing, or a few times what we're seeing, is that people end up being positive, and then that result comes to the health district. So if you see where that red is, where I'm positive, I'm positive and I need to self-isolate, the results go to the health district, there is a long time period before that where somebody could be infectious. So it could be, 1 day, 2 days, it could be up to potentially a week before that. So the time to mitigate and stop this is well before you see the numbers coming out from ODH or from us, okay? All right, so over the course of the outbreak, these are the Greene County numbers. This is county-wide. The black indicates those positive cases. The white ones indicate the probables, or the ones who have had antibody testing. I will tell you today we got our first test result back that is called the antigen testing. So the antigen testing is more like a pregnancy test, a rapid test, an antiviral test, where you go in and get the flu or the strep, rapid test for strep. So that's the first test that we saw today. So in addition to confirmed and probable, we're going to see confirms not just have the PCR test, but we will also see the antigen tests start to show up in these numbers. So overall, again, 190 cases showing up here. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see increased numbers. I'm going to show you exactly what those numbers are. If you follow the course of the outbreak, the tallest, about the third or fourth column in, that was right about the time that what people call lockdown, that is when the most stringent restrictions were placed on the community. And then 2 weeks after that, you can see where case numbers, these Greene County case numbers, were going down, 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 until that point right around May the 30th. And then right after that, the increases that we saw. So I want to talk a little bit about testing and the testing that's been available in Greene County. Initially, at the start of the outbreak, we really only had 2 sites that we knew of that were testing. That was Hometown Urgent Care here in Xenia and the UD Arena. So we feel like testing was not always widely available in Greene County. They were also restricting who could be tested, and it had to be individuals who were symptomatic or healthcare workers. So there were tiers. Towards the end of May, of course, the tiers opened up on June 11th. That was when all tiers could be tested. And we did some widespread testing just this week. Well, we didn't, but the Greene County Health Center did. So this is just the raw numbers, week to week, what gets reported. Down at the bottom, you're also going to see that the cases get classified by a few different dates. And this is just the way it is in public health. It can be by the date that the person had the onset of symptoms. So remember that first graph, they could have had symptoms and then waited for them to be tested. But the date that we had available from us, from all of the lab slips and everything, says that's the first date, or it could be the date that they did the nasal swab, or it could be the date that the test was resulted. So we classify those back into those weeks so that it truly shows when the person was sick, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. All right. So for the total accumulated cases by zip code, this is one way that we often see on the state's website how these things are getting classified. Overall, there's probably, I can't do math in my head, but clearly the 45324 zip code had more overall accumulated cases during this time period. So what does that tell us? Well, it either tells us, A, that there's more disease in that particular zip code, or it could be telling us that those individuals just had better access to getting the test run. And really, it's not clear necessarily. If you look at 45385, obviously in this slide, overall, those 30 cases would represent not just the Xenia area, but anyone living out in the township area would also be in 45385. What this slide doesn't tell you, and really, as the numbers are aggregated at the state level, it doesn't tell you, if you look at Beaver Creek has about 4 different zip codes. So if you start to add in 45440, 453132, their numbers are very similar, and in some cases they're actually higher than your numbers. So what do we do to level the playing field? Again, this is the map. This just gives you the overall numbers and where they're located throughout Greene County. To level the playing field, we do something called case rates. And lots of times you'll see case rates put out there like through the region. Greene County has one of the lowest case rates in our region. And all it is a numerator, denominator, and a multiplier. And I'll show you some of the figures that come from that. But Greene County has about 110, we'll say, 110 cases for every 100,000 population. We know that our population in Greene County as of 2018 was 165, somewhere around 165,000. And so it's going to be the total number of cases, 190 divided by that 165,000 times 100,000. When we do that, and we're comparing county to county. For our community, we have broken it down and looked at it by 10,000s because we have some very small communities of maybe 1,000 or small townships of maybe 1,000. And then we have all the way up to the Beaver Creek Township, which has about 53,000. So we have to level that playing field. And if we look at it that way, then you can see Xenia Township is somewhere between 7 and 8 per 10,000 people. There's probably 32,000 within the Xenia Township area. So if that's 7 at any given time, you could have 21 cases. But per 10,000 people, it's considered 7.8. If you look at something like Sugar Creek Township, they have 18. And so sometimes we get comments on social media, and they'll say something like, well, I want to know where it's safe. You know, I need to know where I can go and what's the safer community and things like that. If you just looked at this, and if this were today's numbers, I would probably want to go to a community that only had 7 people per 10,000 versus 18 people per 10,000 population. So, so that's how some people will try and interpret this risk. However, what I can tell you is that every single person, all of those 190 people that we talked about, and those are very small numbers out of the 165,000, but every single one of them, by the time they have that test result, they're doing what's called self-isolating. They're at home. They're watching TV. They're ordering their groceries. You know, they're doing whatever you do during quarantine. They're no threat to the public whatsoever. So it's a little bit misleading. The risk, the time period of the risk goes back to that very first slide that I showed you. It's in the pre-symptomatic. It's in the days before the test where they're out there circulating the virus around. And so why do we give those safety messages and those health protocols? That's why, is because that is when the risk is. It's not after they're at home, you know, and we know they're home because we talk to them. What does that mean? So with every case that is a COVID-19 case, we call them at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. Sometimes their symptoms change, so they're just checking in with us. And anyone that they've been in contact with, we talk to them too. There's a lot of discussion sometimes on contact tracing, and well, what is that? I mean, for as long as I've been in public health, I will tell you, and that was like right after 9/11, contact tracing is just the thing that we do to interrupt the transmission of disease. Last year in Greene County, there were several cases of hepatitis A among IV drug users. What did we do? We found out who those IV drug users were, who were they sharing needles with, and by February, I mean, that whole disease transmission was interrupted and stopped, and we have not had that problem ever since. So each year in Greene County, we receive about 1,800 reports of disease. So this is something we do all the time. It's not a scary thing. It's just how we interrupt disease transmission. It's very, very common in public health to do. So here, again, just COVID rates per 10,000 population, where the municipalities are within. Down on the lower left-hand side, these were the calculations probably as of the 21st. And you can see, well, what does that mean, you know, for cases? So in Bath and Fairborn, it was 66. Behind that would have been all of the Beaver Creek area, the Beaver Creek Township with all those zip codes. So they actually had 50 at that point in time as an accumulation over all this time. Sugar Creek 30, and Xenia only had 26. So we were a little bit surprised by the announcement on the 18th. I have to tell you that I felt really bad. I mean, I just felt horrible at that moment when zip codes were announced, because that can be misleading. And I'll talk in the next slide a little bit about what I think Ohio needs to do. Down at the bottom, if you want to just look at the week ending, one thing that we do is we can count those cases by those township areas and determine whether or not there's an increase. So for Xenia, for the number of cases per township in Xenia and Xenia Township, they're going to show up in green. So as of May the 30th, there was 1 case throughout the entire area for Xenia Township. And then on the 6th, there were 6 new cases. At that point in time, that is where I was like, I'm going to pay attention to this a little bit. Is this a true increase or not? Or is this just the fact that more testing is going on? I go back to the data and they start pulling, you know, there's probably 10 labs now. There's CompuNet, there's LabCorp, there's Soin was doing their testing at the end of May. So there were many, many more opportunities to get testing. And it appeared that our population was going out and getting that testing done. So overall, there May the 30th, 1 case for Xenia Township. What we would consider active cases for monitoring during that week was 9, with the 3 that were new cases that week. June the 8th, we had 24. June the 15th, this is countywide, 37. June 22nd, 61. And today we have 74 cases that we would continue to be monitoring throughout Greene County. So is there an increase? Yes, there's an increase in the raw number of cases that are occurring. For Xenia Township, we went from 1. We had 6 reported on June the 6th. And then by the end of the week on the 13th, looks like we had 1. And then by the 20th, additional 3. So if I add those numbers up just from the from the 30th of May to June the 13th, that's 10 here in Xenia Township. But if I look at Sugar Creek's, which is in blue with the striped lines, they had 3 and 7 the week of the 6th and the 13th, and they also had 10. So why were their zip codes not called out? I don't know. For Bath Township, 4, 10, and 12. And in that particular instance, 13 of those were an aggregate of cases that had occurred in that particular community. So again, we were surprised. Then the Ohio map up there, again, is just the case rates per 100,000. And you can see, looking in our region, which is, we call it the West Central region of Ohio, on that particular day, it looks like we were about 104, 105 per 100,000, which is lower than many of the rural communities. Like Preble County was 126, just to our south at 130. Clark, just above us, at nearly 500. So overall, Greene County has done very, very well. People ask me, well, why have you done so well? And I think a lot of it has to go back to the fact that we started very early. We called community meetings very early. We set up sectors very early. We were talking to the nursing homes, asking them to look for individuals with these symptoms and get those individuals tested. You know, we have just been very fortunate up through that first phase, through Memorial Day, we'll say, where we had no outbreaks in nursing homes. All of our first responders had PPE when they needed it. We didn't have any of them sick. There was a Greene County Sheriff's deputy who was reported in the news. That individual actually lived in Clark County. So when we count cases back, it actually goes back to your residency. And when we do the back tracing, looking back where they've been over the past few weeks, their exposure was not within Greene County, so that was a good thing. All along, we've shared on social media historical context so that people could see that a lot of these things, these measures that have been done, are not things that haven't been done before. Every new piece of information that would come out, or every time there's like a new myth and conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff, I don't even know where that stuff comes from, but it's not a political thing and it's not a conspiracy theory. These are just the numbers. So you're seeing the Greene County numbers like we're seeing the Greene County numbers. And then we kind of wonder, well, I wonder what this is, and I wonder what's going on. Are we giving enough testing in a particular area? And we wonder about all of those things. We did a lot of collaboration, a lot of messaging. I have probably 60 employees at the health district, and we would say week after week after week, we're going to focus on our mission to interrupt this transmission of this disease. We're going to focus on our message. We can't fix everyone's message that's out there, and we won't be able to correct everyone's message that is out there. Then as far as our basic decision making, we always made our decisions on our local data and what we were seeing. So if we saw more hospitalizations and we thought, oh, that looks kind of serious, you know, there's a difference between just being hospitalized versus being in the intensive care unit versus being on a ventilator. I think one of the most concerning cases that I saw in Greene County is one of a 22-year-old on a ventilator. And lots of times we don't hear that. We keep thinking it's everybody 65 and older that this is happening to and that it's dangerous to. That's not always true. So I would like all of us to be more sensitive to those families that this has affected. In some cases, you could have 9 or 10 people in your community, and it could have affected 5 members of one family. And so that's pretty devastating for one family to try and navigate. All right, so issues around data. We have said since day one. So our disease reporting system was upgraded back in about 2002, 2003. So it's ancient by most standards today. What our data system does not do, it doesn't geocode very well. Every single case that comes in, it gives us an address, and if we want to track it back to a city, track it back to a township, we manually have to do that. So that's a weakness for our systems. Just communicating the risk that is out there. Right now, Ohio is looking at information as it comes in. So what are the important key metrics that we look at? The state of Washington will use something like all communities should be at 25 per 100,000. So that's basically 2 cases for every 10,000. And we know, like we just reported, okay, so there were 9 in Xenia at the time when that came out. And it's kind of like, okay, so then what would we do? So they want to create these categories where if you're above a certain level, it could be anywhere from let's increase awareness in our community, to let's alert the community, to, this is kind of a high alarm area where people don't need to be out and circulating, especially if you have the underlying health conditions. So we really need acceptable key metrics that all districts are measuring the same way. If the data is all going to the state, then the state should be able to pull that right out of the system and pop it out there for everyone to see. So we don't necessarily need more data, more graphs. We need some meaningful metrics that all communities kind of say, oh, well, here I'm a 2 today, and now I'm a 5, and this is a problem. Sometimes we look at the rate of new infections. So in that chart where you were seeing, we had 0, and then we had 12, and then we had 20, and then 30, and then back to 20. So some communities will take every 2-week period, and they will look at that as a rate per 100,000 of new infections that are occurring. So it could be that we were at 2 infections, and then we were at 10 per 100,000, and then we were at 20 per 100,000. And then we have to translate that into meaningful knowledge and action in our communities. Positivity rates you hear a lot about. And positivity rates is one of those things that, as an example, the other day on the what was it, yesterday? My days have run together, I apologize. But yesterday, we know that the 5 Rivers Greene County Health Center and the Ohio National Guard were testing over at the Health District building. And by the end, today, I finally heard the final number. It was 975 tests. And so often we've heard the governor talk about a positivity rate of 5%. We want to be below 5%. So what that means, and I don't do math in my head, so you can help me, would be that out of that 975 tests, we would expect no more than 5% of them to come back as positives. So that's maybe 50 people. Right. Sometimes within our own data, we've seen among asymptomatic individuals that the positivity rate is closer to 10%. And so that may mean that we need to test more. So why did we think it was important that Xenia have this additional testing? It was not necessarily related to an increased number of cases coming in. We would not classify it as a spike. It was just an increased number, and we felt like it was based on testing and availability. But we do know, anecdotally, people will tell us, I can't get to the doctor to get the note, the script, to go and get the test done. That costs money. I can't afford that. I've lost my job. They will tell us, I don't have the transportation to get somewhere to get that test done. And so we feel it's important that for areas where there's low income, there's aged, there's minorities or people who are disabled, that they have the opportunity to get the test. So it's equal opportunity for all. So we'll see how many tests come back. What I can guarantee you is that we're going to get some positives back. Do we think they'll all be from Xenia? No, not necessarily. We know just in talking to some of those individuals, they were able to come from other counties. We've asked 5 Rivers Greene County Health Center to help us track that back by capturing that information, those addresses, and hopefully we can begin to break it down. But when those numbers go up, are we going to be surprised? No, we're not going to be surprised at all. We're not going to go tell individuals to please run screaming into the night and be afraid, because the reality is when you are at risk is not when you find out that number. We can go back to that first slide. It's well before you even see that number. So people will say, well, I want to protect my family. The time to protect your family is today. It is right now. And you can do that through some simple things. Simple things like wearing the mask, keeping the distance, washing your hands, cleaning surfaces, all of those things that you've heard. You can probably recite them in your head and in your sleep. You might wake up at night even thinking about them like I do. I don't know. But again, where I feel like we could have done better overall in our own response is just educating the community to understand public health and to understand a lot of the public health terminology that you've heard. Because lots of times we're just in the background and you don't hear from public health, you know, when we have disease that could be tracked back to a restaurant or disease that could be tracked back to risky behavior among people. But certainly I think everyone has a better understanding of public health today. Overall, the support has been very positive from our community. Our community's been very compliant, and I think our numbers show that, as you saw the curve going down. So I think that's all I have. If you have questions for me, comments, I'm happy to take them and respond.
All right.
Just want to give a nod to Melissa and her staff. They have been fantastic in dealing with the situation here locally. They are in constant communication with our public safety on a weekly or multiple times per week basis. When information needs to get out, they get it put out there, working in conjunction with Greene County as well. As we've made policy decisions locally, things like when to open the splash pad, do we have a fireworks show? We've consulted with Melissa. She's given us good advice. And so as we've made those decisions, it's been in consultation with those experts. And I just want to just acknowledge what they've done and offer some appreciation, and we'll continue that communication.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, Melissa, how I didn't properly introduce you. For those that are watching, this is the Greene County Public Health Commissioner. She doesn't work for them. She runs it, right? So buck stops with you. And
work together.
I appreciate your coming tonight. I know I just reached out to you as early as just Tuesday. And thank you to Councilman Scrivens who asked for you to come out. You know, a lot of news out there. A lot of people got a little concerned when they heard we were a potential hotspot. And I appreciate you coming forward tonight and trying to explain these numbers. And I think you did a great job with that.
Yeah, I will tell you, my response to that evening, after feeling very sick and distraught over that, was I immediately emailed the director of the Ohio Department of Health, Lance Himes, you know, and just explained to him, this is what I see. You know, this doesn't feel right to us. And then in talking to Brent, I mean, I have deep regret over the way that was presented. It felt like just, you know, dropped.
Sure.
It just
Yeah.
felt dropped.
I think I emailed you that day, and I think in a nutshell it was kind of like, what the heck was the...
It was much more polite than that.
Yeah, it was.
He did.
Right. Thank you. Does any
He's watching
of
out.
my
So am I,
colleagues?
you know?
Melissa, is
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
data that you presented tonight on PowerPoint, is any of that available to us or to the public? Because that's very helpful. And I know I am answering these questions a lot. And so this, you know, I'm sitting here taking a picture with my phone, but is that something that we could have access to?
Well, what we're working on is trying to create meaningful data and information and not just be creating data all the time.
Right.
And really, we try and push back on the Ohio Department of Health and have them do it so that things get measured the same way
Okay.
over all jurisdictions. So we've held very close to what ODH has asked us to do. At the very beginning, we were asked to just have the Ohio Department of Health putting out the numbers. We said, okay, we'll do that. And then more questions came along. And again, you know, I would say, once you see that number, a great deal of time has gone by and those people are home. There's really not a risk in the community because they're at home. And I think that can lend itself to false security. And then it can also lend itself to fear and not wanting to go into a particular community. And we've seen it bounce all over the place. I mean, it's Cedarville, it's Jamestown, it's here, it's there. It's there. I mean, so we continue to work on doing that and trying to have the mapping. I will tell you, on Monday is when you're going to see the current case counts, and we want to get better at our data and the information that we're
Okay.
providing too. So it takes time. We have a full-time epidemiologist who has a PhD in epidemiology. Councilman Scrivens knows him. So sometimes he's working on outbreaks or linking these cases, and then sometimes he'll get these data requests. So we're trying to get better
Okay,
at that.
thank you.
We can share this PowerPoint with all of you as well.
Thanks.
Melissa, can I ask a question real quick too? There's, a lot of discussion, as I've talked to different folks, questions coming up about the antibody testing and determining maybe that I have this in the past. Can you just give us a little bit of insight on the availability of that kind of testing? How far back is a look-back period? And would that be available for us to get a better perspective on whether some of this may have hit earlier than we were aware of?
The antibody testing detects the immune response. So you have something called IgM, which is like right after you're infected and maybe up to the first 10 days or so, you start to build that response. So your body is saying, this is something foreign inside of me, and we need to ramp up our resources to take care of it. And then you get what's called IgG. So when you have IgG or you have antibody testing, that is what it is looking at, is the longer term immunity. So there's lots of research that comes out during all of this. And I always say, you can take that as a piece of information. I heard earlier on that you will have antibodies for 6 months, meaning that you would have immunity for 6 months. The latest research is showing more like 2 months. It's a new virus, and so every piece of research that comes out is like a big giant puzzle, and it's like one more piece. The strongest research is on the masks. If you do nothing else and you wear the mask, you can significantly reduce it by like 80% in your community. But the antibody testing will look back several months to see if you've had it. So some of them, like they were getting tested, I would say by April, and then we would talk to them and they'd say, well, I was sick in January, or I was sick over President's Day. And so we know that there's maybe a couple month period there where they still have the antibodies, and they were sick previously with something that looked like these symptoms. So.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Just,
All right, go ahead.
just speaking for the council, we thank you for your time, and we thank you for your expertise and your availability. And I'm sure that citizens of Xenia and Greene County have gained a lot by just hearing what you had to say this evening. So thank you
Appreciate it.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You to the community. We've done an enormous job and done very well. So that's all of everyone else's work, Thank you.
All right, thank you
Thank
very,
you so
very
much.
I appreciate it.
All right, next on our agenda is audience comments. Due to the COVID-19 situation, comments were solicited via email to Michelle Johnson, our city clerk. I have received one public comment from a resident of Xenia, and I will read points of her letter. Just for the sake of time, I will not read the entire letter, but, and I believe some of you have already received this email as well. This is from Crystal Wilkinson here in Xenia on Thornhill Avenue. Her observation is, after observing and now refusing to spend money in Yellow Springs, I write to you about masking ordinances. We are so close in proximity to Yellow Springs and advised by the same health department, but therefore I want to share some information, and I do hope the fine city of Xenia will not create such a division and ill-informed ordinance to cost our city tourism dollars in the future. This is regarding the ordinance that Yellow Springs has passed to mandate masks. Other comments were advising the city to not please admit any discussion, approval, or creation of an ordinance similar to Yellow Springs. She appreciates the time that we have taken to read this letter, and as working as a council person, this comes as a great duty. I'm sure each member of the council weighs matters carefully before making a vote, and I truly appreciate such action. I look forward to further discussion on this topic if such an ordinance is drafted. I know the mayor has replied, and I have as well. I'm not sure about the rest of the council. I told her at this time I did not see anyone introducing such a motion. Okay, so therefore I'm going to move on to old business. Our first item is ordinance 2020-15.
Could I make
Sorry.
a comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
I do want to share some Greene County data on the idea of masks, and I understand they're very controversial in that
Correct.
we have a wide array of people from, don't tread on me, don't spread on me, right?
Right.
And everything in between. And Yellow Springs has extensively debated this issue. Yellow Springs has not had a positive COVID-19 case since May the 9th. Now, what did they do? Did they, take the hammer to their community? Not necessarily. They aggressively did an education. They've done signage, signage in the businesses. But in order to do that, they brought together a diverse group. The business community, the chamber was there, and the individuals were there. So sometimes it's up to the community to decide for the community
Right.
what you want to do.
Right. All right, very good. Thank you again. All right, so our first item on old business is ordinance 2020-15. This is a second reading. This is determining to proceed with the improvement of city streets and public ways by the lighting thereof within street lighting district number 5 for years 2021 through 2022. This was introduced by Vice President Wallace on 6/11.
And now we move to passage.
Thank you. Move for passage. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Dean. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is Resolution 2020-0 or O. This is authorizing the sale of city-owned property located at 895 Louise Drive to Philip Stevens. This was a second reading introduced by Mayor Mays on 6/11.
Thank you, sir. Move for passage.
Move for passage by the mayor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Dean. Any discussion regarding the sale of this property?
Councilman Branham.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Branham. So sorry. Thank you for correcting me.
Real quick, I do have a comment for that,
Yes, sir.
President. I just want to say this is great. I think it's good that the city's getting rid of some of their vacant lots. I know that there's one directly across the street from it, so hopefully somebody eventually will move into purchasing that one as well. I know that it's been quite a few years that the city's been mowing and maintaining this property.
Thank you very much for that observation, and my apologies for the error. Any other comments or questions regarding this? Seeing none, could I get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean,
Aye.
Councilman Branham,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Smith.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. We have no public hearings tonight, so our next item is new business, Resolution 2020-P, listed as an emergency. This is the requesting funds from Greene County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund and affirming that those funds received therefrom will be expended only to cover costs of the city of Xenia consistent with requirements of Section 5001 of the CARES Act and any applicable regulations as necessary pursuant to State House Bill 481 before receiving such funds and declaring an emergency. We'll turn this over to our city manager.
Thank you, sir. That's quite a title, but necessary. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act that we've all heard about, was enacted by the U.S. government to provide broad-ranging national assistance in response to the COVID-19 health crisis. As a component of this legislation, direct financial aid was provided to states with the intent that the states would advance resources to local jurisdictions to help offset the increased expenditures related to the virus, to the response for the virus. Recently, the state of Ohio approved legislation, as mentioned in the title, that specifically allocated the CARES Act resources for all local jurisdictions, specifically those not previously or directly given funding through the federal legislation. And they established a distribution methodology. In essence, the funds are being distributed similarly to what is done through our local government fund distribution method here in the state of Ohio. The state's sending those funds to county auditors' offices, and then the county auditors will then divide those monies based on the formula as mentioned. As required by state and federal legislation, in order to be eligible for the CARES Act funding, local jurisdictions must authorize a resolution requesting and accepting the funding and confirming that the funds will be used in a manner consistent with those requirements as established by the federal act. And that's the purpose of the legislation that we're presenting to council this evening, is that resolution to authorize that acceptance. Upon acceptance, the city will have to establish a new budgetary fund, a local coronavirus relief fund, for accountancy of the grant resources. We have to track all of this, and we will do whatever's necessary to do that. With council's approval of the emergency resolution and acceptance of the funds, we will then, on the backside of this, have to have some policy discussion with council as to how those funds will be used. We can have those funds used for reimbursement of expenses that we have and will incur related to direct response pursuant to the guidance offered by the Department of Treasury. But there are some other options as to how these funds can be used, and so it will necessitate some conversation with council. I think we got a revised number today in the ballpark of $950,000 is what the city would receive here, which is a little lower than we originally thought, but that's still a pretty good sized chunk of change. So staff is recommending that we introduce this evening as an emergency so that we can expedite the approval and receipt of those funds, and then we would come back to council at a future, though, date not too far in the future, to discuss how you want to approach the use of those dollars. So we recommend approval this evening.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Do you have anyone who would like to make the motion to move on this resolution as an emergency?
So moved as an emergency.
Thank you. Moved by Mayor Mays as an emergency. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
The only question I had was answered, that was the amount of the request.
Thank you very much. We have a second by Vice President Wallace. And can you repeat that amount again?
It's just under 950,000. Ryan, do you
Yep.
have a specific?
Yeah, I think it's like 945,000, right in that neighborhood. And I would just add that in addition, obviously, to seeking guidance from council on how to spend those dollars, we'll need to bring back an appropriation ordinance, and we actually have a few other things to bring back as well. So we'll bring those together, but we'll need to appropriate those dollars in order to spend them down.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second as an emergency. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. The next item, I know Councilman Scrivens and our law director has been working really hard on this. Our next item is Resolution 2020-Q, an introduction. This is designating the roundabout at the intersection of East Church Street and North Columbus Street as the James T. Henry Senior Circle. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start the introduction, and if Councilman Scrivens wants to collaborate on that, that'd be great. The core construction of the new roundabout is complete, but in addition, there are plans to install some aesthetic features to that space. And the intent is to really provide a nice gateway feature to motorists as they're entering our community from US 42, in addition to the functional value that the roundabout would bring. Staff has been in discussion with current and former members of council for some time, considering the opportunity to name the roundabout in recognition of a community leader who has made a significant contribution in pursuit of an enhanced quality of life here in the city of Xenia for both residents as well as businesses. Through these talks, we believe there's no person that really exhibits those pursuits better than Mr. James T. Henry Sr., who was the first African-American individual to be elected as mayor of the city of Xenia, and this happened way back in 1969, so that's truly a trailblazer in this region, in this community. Staff recommends introduction of a resolution that would name the roundabout at the intersection of East Church Street and North Columbus Street as the James T. Henry Senior Circle. With council's concurrence, staff will work to finalize the design of that new entry feature within the confines of the roundabout and clearly identify that it would be named in Mayor Henry's honor. I want to add we have been in contact with the surviving members of Mayor Henry's family, and they are just ecstatic about this opportunity and would like to be here for any type of official presentation of that. So again, we recommend council introduce the resolution to name this, and I would just then defer to Councilman Scrivens for anything else.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Mr. City Manager. Mr. President, I think you've said pretty much the whole preamble to this. Mayor Henry was selected. He wasn't elected as mayor. Back in those days, it was the Xenia City Commission, and the sitting commissioners selected amongst themselves someone to act as mayor. And he was selected and then reselected and reselected. I don't know how many terms he did. I think his length of service was about 28 years on this council. So he did his thing, and he was well respected. And it's just a beautiful thing that we could honor him in this way. And I'm sure the family will get a lot of gratitude out of that. Not only the family, but also the general community. He was well respected at the university. He was chair of the Earth Sciences Department at Central State. I had the good fortune of taking him for World Geography Eastern Hemisphere during the summer session. And we had him for 3 hours every day for 5 days a week. And the man was brilliant. So I was privileged to sit up under him and learn from him. And it would be a pleasure to introduce this resolution as opposed to an ordinance for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Introduced by Councilman Scrivens. Madam Law Director, do you have anything else you would like to add? I know you've been working on this with Councilman Scrivens.
No, per the charter, this could have been done by ordinance or resolution. We chose to do a resolution that will go into effect immediately, where an ordinance, once we pass it, we have to wait 30 days.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I have a question, and I don't know whether it goes to the law director, the city manager, or Mr. Scrivens. Is there any reason why we left the title mayor off of the title of the circle? Instead of Mayor James T. Henry Sr., we just got James T. Henry. I think if the title was
Very
there,
good.
it would readily
I would agree.
explain why we did it.
Very
And I know there's going to be a plaque installed at some point, but short answer than the short direction is if it were Mayor James T. Henry Sr., I think it's more explanatory.
Very good. That's a
Very much
very
wanted.
good observation, sir. We appreciate that.
We can certainly accommodate that. Yep.
Please, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, Mr. President, if I could, North Columbus Avenue from the intersection of East Main Street, North Columbus, all the way out going northbound toward the university to the city limits has been also designated as Martin Luther King Way. And there has been signage in the past there. I think it's kind of gotten roughed up in the process, but that signage also should be reestablished also. So just wanted to throw that in. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, before I forget, if we can discuss sometime with you, a citizen did approach me regarding backup on Columbus, going into town, trying to turn right there where there's a left turn only, and then either a right or forward lane. Maybe making modifications to that. Is that something that has to go through traffic, or can our engineer take
Possibly.
care of
I
that?
think it's a fairly minor tweak, so I'm not sure. I think the suggestion of our engineer was to increase the light for traffic on Columbus is pretty short. It defaults to green most of the time to expedite traffic on Main. So the quickest, most we think effective and cheapest answer is to just tweak the light schedule. We'll increase the green light on Columbus. And we think that'll take care of the issue. Interestingly enough, it's worth noting that this problem is being created because the traffic at the former intersection that was lit, which is now the roundabout, is expedited there. So previously, those signals were linked, and it took people longer to get through the two.
Right.
Now they're getting through that intersection at Church and Columbus faster, which means there's a little bit of a queue there at Main and Columbus. So again, the engineers already reached out to the folks who help us with our light
Thank you.
timing, our signal timing, and we're in the process of making that tweak. I think he said it's only like a 7-second light at Columbus, so we can probably double that or more, and I think that should fix the problem. And if not, we'll have advanced discussions back with Traffic Commission about what else we can do.
Very good. Thank you very much. Our next item is also an administrative motion. This is waiving competitive bidding for professional services and authorizing the city manager to accept and proceed with the price quotation from American Suncraft Company Incorporated to paint 2 city logos on the West 2nd Street water tower, excuse me. Mr. City Manager, can you enlighten us on that, please?
Sure. The West 2nd Street tower, water tower, was rehabilitated about a year or so ago. Part of that included repainting of the water tower in order to protect that appurtenance for many years to come. And at the time, it was city staff's recommendation to wait before adding any logo. Our desire was to try to negotiate with other partners and/or private entities to look at co-funding some of that finish work. To be candid, just in light of various circumstances, including but not limited to the COVID, that just doesn't appear to be an option. And so we want to get that tower finished out without any further delay. And so we are recommending that we look at this alternative with the design as presented in your agenda packets. American Suncraft is the firm that completed the exterior painting and rehabilitation of the tower back in 2018-19. Firm quoted a price of $49,870 for the addition of the 2 city logos onto the tower. As this work is a carryover project from American Suncraft Company's prior painting, we're recommending council authorize the expenditure of funds without formal bidding of the project because it's professional services, and this is allowed in accordance with Section 9.16C of the city's charter. Staff recommends council waive the bidding and authorize acceptance of the quoted price from American Suncraft at the price that was noted. We do have funds in the 2020 budget totaling $75,000 for this work, so obviously it's coming in quite a bit below what the budget estimate was. And of course, these funds are water funds that we can only use for water-related projects such as painting the towers. And again, that's why we would move forward at this point in time. So we recommend council take action to allow us to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Do we have a motion to waive competitive bidding?
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moved by Councilman Scrivens. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Vice President Wallace. Any discussion regarding this?
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilman Scrivens?
Let's go defer. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. City Manager, I see the proposed logo says Xenia City of Hospitality established 1803. We're not the bicycle capital of the Midwest anymore.
Well, we would still argue that we are, and we would argue that Greene County is really sort of the, it's, I think the tagline that they use, it's the largest network of paved trailways in the country. And that's certainly part of what we would promote in the community. We felt in this particular case that we wanted to stick with something a little more traditional, so we didn't apply the city's newer logo or even the seal. We wanted something that was sort of clean. This is a little bit of an homage to the Xenia City Schools as well. If you look at their color scheme and how they present their logo, it's a little bit of an homage to them as well. We thought it was clean and nice and not too complicated.
Just an aside, we're still the home of the Buccaneers, and if you go to West Carrollton on their water tower, they so state that. And a lot of the teams that Xenia competes against, I've seen their water towers. So just point that out. Thank you, sir.
I will say that in response, I concur, and I think we should take great pride in Xenia Community Schools and the education opportunities that they provide. We have recently been in the process of updating all of the incorporation signs at all of the major roadways into our community, and what I've directed our staff to do is to put home of the Xenia Buccaneers at each of those entry points. So yeah, not on the water tower, but certainly whatever road you come into the community, you're going to be reminded that this is Bucs country. So.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Vice President Wallace, did you have something you wanted to add?
Actually, I was going to comment on the fact that I liked the City of Hospitality, even though I actually do agree with what Councilman Scrivens is saying, but the City of Hospitality still the way I think of Xenia and the way I describe it when I talk about Xenia to friends and people that I know from around the country. So I like that clean logo.
Thank you very much. I would concur. I do like the idea of incorporating some Buccaneers in there. However,
plenty of space there
we do have other schools in our community aside
true, yeah.
from Xenia Community Schools. But I like the city of hospitality. We live in some mean times right now. I think people are angry, and anytime you can throw up the word hospitality or kindness, it's a reminder to people. So anyone else have anything they'd like to yes, Councilman Branham.
Mr. President, I do have a question for Mr. Duke. I noticed on the back of the schedule of bills that there's water tower painting / lease. Is that back from when we painted a previous tower?
Yes, so it most likely is from this tower.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
can-
that particular lease, we've actually borrowed for both the West Second Street, but also the Patton Street Tower, those other projects. So both of those projects were funded via capital lease.
And those projects were both before your current term on the council, and we did both. Actually, for both of them, it had been first time in I think close to 20 years. We did interior and exterior inspections during the towers, did the interior surfacing and painting, and then did the same thing on the exterior. We finished out the exterior on the Patton Street towers at the time, although we did recently add some additional lettering on the one tower on Patton Street. This we waited because I'll just be honest, we were hoping to find a sponsor, somebody to help defer this or defray this portion of the cost. It just didn't work out right now. We've gotten lots of, I don't say complaints, but encouragement from the public to finish the tower out so it wasn't just a large clear tower. So that's that gives you some background on that and kind of where it's at today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is also administrative motion. This is authorizing the city manager to execute with a contract with Motorola Solutions emergency call work system for replacement of the Xenia Green Central Communications Center 911 system. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. The Xenia Green Central Communications Center currently utilizes a phone system that went into service in 2005, and it has now reached its end of life. The current system is not redundant and does not provide a backup for 911 call answering in the event of an outage or emergency at our primary 911 center. It's clearly time to address these concerns, and we feel there are potential liabilities that we need to address. For a replacement system, staff is recommending a Motorola Solutions Emergency CallWorks Next Generation 911 call taking, mapping, and IP-based telecommunications system with integration services. This proprietary system would work in conjunction with other Motorola network components which are part and parcel to our current dispatch operation. The replacement of the 911 phone system is planned in our 2020 budget, and the purchase would be funded through grant monies that council has previously accepted, as well as 911 fund dollars. And we want to remind folks those 911 fund dollars are specific to 911 dispatch and can only be used for those purposes. Staff recommends authorization to purchase the Motorola system through Motorola Solutions at a cost of $336,782.86. With recurring yearly support and maintenance costs as detailed in the provided proposal from Motorola Solutions. Pursuant to ORC 128.03F, the purchase, acquisition, installation, and maintenance of a 911 system and customer premise equipment at a public safety answering point such as our dispatch center, including customer premise equipment used to provide wireless enhanced 911, is exempt from competitive bidding requirements. The purpose of that is because so many of these are proprietary systems and you can't combine different components from different companies. So for that reason, we are requesting that council authorize this evening the ability to execute a contract with a communication system and services agreement, I should say, with Motorola Solutions for the purchase as indicated. I will add also that we are in the process of evaluating redundancy for our 911 dispatch center, and a number of activities. Our contract with Bellbrook and Sugar Creek for dispatch services expires later this year, and so we've initiated some renegotiations on that. And then talking with the county as well as other jurisdictions who provide 911 services about the long-term future of this service. And we think there's some opportunities for continued partnerships to reduce cost and provide a high-level service. But again, this is necessary really right now to bring us up to a modern age with modern equipment that will provide an enhanced service.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We have a motion to authorize city manager to execute this contract.
So moved.
So moved by the mayor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilman Dean. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions regarding this emergency call center?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Mr. City Manager, the useful life of the last system we're replacing was about 15 years. What do you project the new useful life to be?
Probably similar. It's a little bit unknown because the advancement of technology, the shelf life of technology is really reducing because it's just advancing so much more quickly than it has in the past. This will really facilitate our opportunity to not only do some of the things we talked about in terms of redundancy, but it's part of the next phases that are necessary for the truly enhanced 911 that would allow us connectivity with social media. It doesn't facilitate all of that now, but it's the first step in that gateway to be able to make that transition. And those are, of course, in our plans to make that migration. So it's hard to say. I would think we'll get at least a decade out of it, but beyond that, it's a little bit tough to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? We have a motion by the mayor and a second by Councilman Dean. Could I get a roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace?
I did have a question that didn't attract the president's attention.
Sure, go ahead.
Do we have any help with this $300,000+ from other folks who are sharing in our 911 system?
Yeah, so it's important to point out that for this project, as I alluded to, council had in a prior meeting accepted some grant funding that the city applied for on behalf of the center. We were successful in getting that, so about half or a little more than half of the cost is being defrayed by the grant funds. The remaining proceeds that would go toward this purchase are from our 911 fund. Every time you pay a phone bill or a cell phone bill, you'll see on your itemized invoice, yeah, there's a 911 charge that's assigned, and so for all those folks in our jurisdiction that pay those fees come to Greene County, and they're distributed between the answering points in Beaver Creek, Fairborn, and Xenia. And so we are using those 911 dollars to help offset the remaining the balance that's not covered by the grant.
Okay, so there's no impact, budgetary impact.
No, in fact, really, this is a positive because it's the grant monies are allowing us to save a lot of those 911 dollars that can be used for other dispatch-related expenditures.
Awesome. Aye.
All right, thank you. Continue roll call, please.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is also an administrative motion, which is approving the scheduled bills tonight. I even hate to say the amount. We got quite a lot of bills on there. $2,040,261.11. Mr. Finance Director.
Yes, so this is an extremely large schedule of bills. There are several reasons for that. One is debt service. As Councilman Branham mentioned, the water tower painting lease, and I did look at that. That's actually the Spring Hill Patton Street standpipe is what that debt service there is for. There was also some debt service for Contract A and Contract B projects that were at our wastewater plants. There's also, as council will remember, here recently, a need to replace a generator at one of the wastewater plants, and so a payment for that is included. The largest sum of money on the schedule bills is related to the meter reading project, again, paying
Right.
for those meters. That's $1 million of that $2 million. So half of the schedule bills is for that purpose, and that project is going relatively smoothly. They're about a week in. They've completed about 800 installs, so they're about 7% done, moving through it pretty quickly. Ran into a few problems early in the process. I wouldn't say major, but just minor inconveniences that were caused to customers, and we're doing our best to try to limit those inconveniences to the best of our ability, but that's going fairly smoothly. So, yep, that's the the reason for the very large schedule of bills here this week.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the bills, please?
So moved, Mr.
Pay our
President.
bills.
Okay, have a motion by Councilman Scrivens and a second by Vice President Wallace. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions regarding the bills tonight? Okay, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dean?
Aye.
Councilman Branham?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor May?
Hi.
President Smith?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Our next item is appointed officials' reports and council comments. I'm going to go ahead and start with our city manager.
Thank you, sir. The only thing I wanted to speak to this evening was just some final reminders related to the Sunnycab Memorial Fireworks Festival, or that'd be the Memorial Fireworks. We won't have the whole festival this year. We just published a video that's providing a lot of this information, but I wanted to go ahead and state it here this evening. We'll be putting that out there for public consumption so people can be prepared for this year's event. We want to say a huge thank you to our host, Strasburg family, the Strasburg Nursery out in Progress, for making their property available for us to launch those fireworks. And then beyond that, obvious thank yous to the Sunnycab family for their continued financial support, Xenia Rotary, who contributed significantly this year to help improve the show. We also have some other partners out there in the Progress area who are offering up their parking for the general public to use, and that includes Lighthouse Baptist Church, Lowe's, Kroger, Walmart, Rural King, and the YMCA. And we really, a huge thank you to all of those local businesses. They were, it was a complete yes. We never had to negotiate anything with them. So, you know, because they have been willing partners, we do want to encourage the public to be kind consumers of that opportunity. So by all means, come out on July 3rd that evening, park in one of those locations. You'll also be able to see fireworks. I think the Xenia Nazarene Church is making their space available. Warner Middle School, that general area is a great viewing location. Folks can park there. If you're in an adjoining neighborhood, you're also going to be able to see these pretty well if you don't have any large trees. But for those who are come out to these locations, we want to let you know there will be some porta-johns on site, so we ask that you use those rather than going into the businesses if they're still open. We're going to do some street sweeping afterward, but we're asking folks if you enjoy some food or whatnot, please take care of your trash so that we're not littering on their property. We remind folks that you're on private property, and without their permission, you can't consume alcohol and you can't shoot off fireworks. So please make sure that you're, again, good stewards of the opportunity to be out there. The fireworks this year, we're excited. This is the most we've been able to financially put into a show, and we had to modify the show because we're not able to sit right there in front of them at Shawnee Park. The viewing audience is a little more distant, so we had to do larger gauge shells. They're going to shoot them a little higher. That means that you're going to be able to see these fireworks from a larger radius, but it also means the nature of the show is going to be different. So we want to let folks know, you know, when you're at Shawnee Park, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can hear it, you can see it. In this instance, you're probably going to hear a little bit, and you're definitely going to see a great show, but you're not going to smell it and feel it quite the same way. So adjust your expectations. We think it's going to be a great show, probably about 20 minutes in length, scheduled to start at approximately 10 p.m. We will go rain or shine. If it's a light rain, we'll definitely be on. The biggest issue weather-wise is wind. If we have a thunderstorm with wind, if there's lightning, we would have to potentially postpone. We would move it to the evening of the 4th. Everything else would be the same, the time, the location, we would just move it to that rain date on the 4th. So we encourage folks to come out, have a great time. Please remember to do so responsibly. Commissioner Howell talked about some of those just, you know, common sense steps that you can take. Wear a mask, stay with your family, don't commune in larger groups. We've provided some guidance as directed by the health department on how you should approach this, and we encourage folks to do it safely so that we don't promote the COVID-19 virus. But again, we want to provide an opportunity for the community to celebrate, not just Independence Day, but celebrate as a community and what it means to be here in Xenia. So thanks to all the sponsors, to the folks who are offering their property up, to everyone who's helped us, and we look forward to seeing everyone come out. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you very much. I also would like to thank those businesses along that area. Our next report is from our finance director, Mr. Duke.
Thank you, President Smith. I did send an email to council earlier today The EPA director has lifted the prohibition on disconnects for utility service starting July 10th. Our plan is to move forward with shutoffs as they would typically be scheduled in late July, so that'd be July 29th. There's a lot of detail in that email about the number of customers who will potentially receive shutoff notices and some of the amounts that are past due. It's a tough situation. There's no perfect way to address it, but ultimately there are a significant number of accounts that are delinquent, and unfortunately, if we prolong that disconnect or that prohibition or the policy to not disconnect, some of those are just going to continue to grow more and further delinquent. So we'll take those steps, do our best to inform the public, and hope for the best. I think that we'll see a pretty large portion of those become current once those notices come out. But we are working with public service to make sure that there's not a tremendous impact on them and the customers. So doing our best to manage that situation as we resume disconnects in a more normal policy. So.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Do we have a schedule of what areas of the community will see the water meter replacement, certain areas, or? Yeah,
so we're working with Nico to get that schedule ahead of time. We've been using HyperReach this week as a tool to try to reach out to people and let them know that they would be in their neighborhood. We also are trying to cross-reference some of the email addresses we have in utility billing to send some messages in that way. Unfortunately, we only have about 10% of our customers' email addresses. We don't have a great number of people who are participating in HyperReach. Actually, this is a great time, I guess, to promote that you can get on our website, sign up for HyperReach, and that will give us the ability to communicate with you when there are different things happening in the community. And so we're trying to be proactive where we can. Unfortunately, we don't have contact information for a large portion of our customers, and so we're trying to narrow down which areas they're going to be in and send that communication, but that can be a little challenging to reach a high percentage of our customers.
We're also sending information out on social media as we are making, or as we're notified of what those next phases will be. And so we're trying to get that information out a day or two in advance, noting that folks can expect either the next day or the next 2 days that they may have that intermittent shutoff. So again, it's as close as we can get. We understand it's maybe not precise, but we just, from day to day, we're not sure how far they're going to be able to get at actual addresses. But it is by neighborhood, so you'll be notified by neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much.
Look on social media for that too.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to mention that I did not receive an email or any prior notification that they weren't here. They did my house, I think it was last Monday morning, and in fact, they parked in front of my house and did the street, this section of Church Street, but they weren't in front of my house 10 minutes. It took them no time at all, so there was absolutely no disruption whatsoever.
Yeah, so we realized that we were struggling to communicate proactively as well as what we would hope to early last week. So we've actually ramped some of that up, and just earlier this week started to solidify some of those processes to try to make sure that people were being notified to the best of our ability, again, to actually connect with people. But we are trying to be a little more proactive. So yeah, early last week, that was one of the things we recognized was a shortcoming, and so we're trying to address that.
I would just add.
Awesome job, in and out.
Yeah, just to add to Dr. Wallace's point that, we say this may take up to an hour, but truthfully, most of these, a few minutes, and we've only had a couple occasions where we've had prolonged outages, and usually that's because of other conditions associated with the water lines that we've observed. So for most people, you barely notice it.
All right, thank you very much. Madam Law Director.
I have just one thing tonight, kind of a quickie thing. If you happen to see, Cox Media reported today, we did finally get a decision from the Ohio Supreme Court regarding the bike path annexation. If you recall, we had filed an annexation petition for 41 acres of land that the city owns as bike path. Attached to that was 4.5 acres that's owned by Central State. We felt that our petition had met all the statutory requirements. The county denied it. We filed for a writ of mandamus as provided under statute with the 2nd District Court of Appeals. The 2nd District Court of Appeals sided with us. The county appealed that to the Ohio Supreme Court, and today the Ohio Supreme Court issued a decision upholding the 2nd District Court of Appeals. The writ of mandamus should have been issued, and the county will be required to pass a resolution approving the bike path annexation. One thing I wanted to point out, if anyone read the article in the Dayton Daily News today, one thing I hate is when they give our residents bad information. That article said that this decision now allows the city to tax all of Central State's employees, and that the university will no longer pay any surcharge for water, sewer, fire. That is 100% incorrect. The only portion that was annexed of Central State was 4.5 acres. To the best of my knowledge, there are no buildings on that 4.5 acres. So this decision did not mean we can now collect income tax from all of Central State. To the point that the Dayton Daily News said that, it is completely and totally erroneous. So if you get questioned on that, I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that as it was reported in the Dayton Daily News, it is not right. But we did get a win from the Ohio Supreme Court today.
Thank you, Madam Law Director. Mr. City Manager, can we have someone from the city office reach out to the Dayton Daily News and ask for an accurate retraction?
With Christina Schaefer and our
Okay.
public relations
Thank
staff
you.
and make sure that they're reporting that correctly. And I would concur with what the law director said, that media assumes a lot of things, and we should not assume that they're correct all
Right.
the time. And in this particular case, that type of statement is, I will say, damaging because it's just factually not true. This council has not made a decision about further annexation. Moreover, Central State would have to take formal actions to usher in any additional annexation, and so that's a point of discussion for the future.
Right.
It's not a part of this lawsuit and of that original petition that went to the commission. So.
Thank you
And
very
great work
much.
to the law director for her brief on that and what was filed.
All right, thank you, Madam Law Director. Next up is mayor and council comments. I'll start on this end with Councilwoman Dean.
I don't really have much to add other than I'm looking forward to the fireworks next weekend. It'll be fun. I'm glad we get to do it.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Dean. Councilman Scrivens.
Thank you, Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen, City of Xenia. Number one, I'd like to express our deep felt condolence to the family of Mr. Swaggart, Bob Swaggart. He was the progenitor of Tiffany's here in town, and anybody who's ever done business with the Swaggarts, they know they're some great people, and sorry for your loss there, Mr. Swaggart. Also, my family physician has gone on to her final reward, and that was Barbara Pitts Coffee. And I grew up with her, went to high school with her, and she became a nurse, and I meandered. Just hate to see her go, but she passed away in her sleep, so if you gotta go, that's the way to go. So to the family of the Swaggarts and the Coffees, we express our deepest sympathy. Mr. City Manager, we're so happy that you spearheaded the move to get the fireworks going. Xenia needed something to be proud about and to be happy about, and you made it happen. So we're hoping that Friday, December the 3rd, once it gets dusk dark, that the citizens of Xenia and the surrounding area will have just a few minutes of quality time to enjoy some fireworks. So we thank you for that. Also, the up-and-coming roundabout, the Mayor James T. Henry Senior Circle, as it will be called. At this point, it's still an unlighted intersection, and we need to move briskly to get that lighting, because that's the crux of my calls on my private phone, is to get the lighting on that intersection. We may have to work with Mr. Berger and the entrances from 42 North and from 42 South, we might have to bring that traffic to a complete stop before they enter the intersection. A couple people have reported back to me they've come down going west on East Church Street, and they look to the left for any oncoming vehicles, none in the circle, but then to the right, the ones coming in from 42 North, they seem to just continue on. So we need to slow that traffic down before it enters to the circle, because there's a question mark there. So both 42 going in from Wilberforce and 42 coming out from Xenia, they both probably should need a stop sign before they get to the circle. Just observation from people who live around there and see what's going on. I have gotten my water meter replaced. I was thoroughly shocked. As a matter of fact, when the water went off, I had Colgate in my mouth. So I had, so what the heck's going on? So I saw 4 people out, struggling, getting my meter together. So we thank the city for its indulgence, and hopefully now my water bill will go down. Now I can get some of my fixtures fixed here. I want to also thank Greene County Health Commissioner Ms. Melissa Howe for coming and sharing with us tonight. I thought that was very timely for her, and her presentation was on point, and we appreciate that coordination. And this finally, congratulations to our law director in prevailing in the case. There's been a lot of back and forth and blowback about our annexation of Central State, but the fact is that the university trustees initiated it, and we followed up on it, and we completed it. So the moving hand having writ now moves on. We'll go ahead and we'll annex the university, and we'll establish a very strong relationship with them in the future. And then hopefully we'll all move forward lockstep. There's nothing but good that can come of this. So any detractors, you got to pay to play. You want smooth roads? You had a chance to get smooth roads, but now we have to endure a little while longer until we decide that we want smooth roads. So when we decide we want better roads in Xenia, and we want better schools, then we'll step to the plate. If not, then we'll continue in our path of mediocrity, which we're right in the center lane. So that's just my observation. You don't have to like it. I got 4 years, so in 4 years you can throw me out. But until that time, I'm going to give you the best of what Thomas Scrivens has to offer. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Scrivens. I'll move down to this side and start with Councilman Dean. Councilman Branham. I cannot get it right tonight. I'm so sorry. We have so many Deans here. Okay.
I just want to thank Ms. Wilkinson for reaching out to council this week. I believe she emailed most of us. I'm not based off of her email, so I just want to say thank you to her. She reached out and engaged to us, and I applaud that as a community member. We appreciate your guys' comments. We appreciate, giving you feedback and receiving feedback as well. So that's all.
Thank you, Councilman Dean.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have anything to add tonight.
Thank you. Next is, I'll go to the mayor and then the vice president. Mayor Mays.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. Participated this week on the 14th. I had an opportunity to participate in the flag retirement ceremony and was allowed to give an invocation. And I just wanted to specifically acknowledge Sheriff Fisher in that particular ceremony. It was very moving, very respectful. It was very educational. There were some things I didn't know about how the ceremony actually took place. So I just wanted to congratulate him. It was beautiful and very moving. And then also wanted to thank our police department. Last Tuesday, Captain Johnson arranged for me to do a ride-along. So I had the opportunity to ride with 2 different officers, Officer Majoris and Officer Moore. Wanted to thank both of them personally for the time that they spent with me. Asked a lot of questions, did a lot of listening. They showed me some things in Xenia, you kind of know about, but some things that I've not gotten up close and personal on. So very educational, and just all the more reason just to say thank you to our police department and the really great job that they're doing, and they need our support. And if you have a chance to do that, I would recommend that for all of you. It's very educational and a little bit exciting. That's all we'll say. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mays. Next is Vice President Wallace.
Well, I missed part of the presentation from the law director. I think she was right at the point of whether or not there would be a surcharge on the water. I don't know exactly what she was saying, but my battery died, so I had to reach and get the electrical cord and get plugged up. I am excited about next week's fireworks. I can't wait to see that. And I am absolutely ecstatic about the outcome of the litigation that we were involved in at the Supreme Court level. And I'm very thankful that the Supreme Court affirmed our position and is allowing us to do, not ordering, that the county approve what we had been requested by Central State to do. And I agree with the sentiments of Councilman Scrivens. We were simply complying with the request of Central State. And I'm very happy that we're going to be able to pursue that partnership and finish that annexation process. And of course, our land that is along the bike path should always have been in the city, and now it will be. So anyway, I'm very happy with that outcome and thankful for the wonderful job that our law director did in processing that litigation.
Thank you, Vice President Wallace. I too will add happy 4th of July to those that are watching, and a reminder that the fireworks are on Friday, July 3rd. It sounds like the rain date will be the 4th of July. So, and again, use your head on this when you're out with your family. I know everyone's excited to get out. 4th of July is a good time. But remember your neighbors and put the protocols in place. If you can wear a mask, wear a mask. If you can social distance, definitely do that. Stay amongst your family. And so I am going to mention that we have a special session on land development code. However, I think our colleagues would probably like a 5-minute recess. So at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn from the regular meeting, and then we'll call back in, say, 7:40.
President Smith, you can actually do the work session as a part of the regular meeting. It's just a work session.
Okay.
You as president, you have the authority to call a recess.
Okay.
If you want to just recess and then restart the meeting, it's all part of one.
Okay, cool.
A special session would only be something that actually takes place outside
Very good.
of your regular meeting. If you don't adjourn, the work session can be part of your regular meeting.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So I'll move for a recess. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by the mayor.
You can just call it, sir.
And we are on a recess till 7:40. Thank you. Thank you for watching.